I got the live thing, so I think we're
okay. Can everyone see
we're good.
screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got a bit of a change happening for us right now in this week. We're going to start with an opening prayer right here, and then we're going to share spiritual thoughts. If I can, I'll go ahead because I noticed this. I did prepare a spiritual thought, so I'll go ahead, if it's all right, offer a prayer and then provide the spiritual thought.
Okay.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this opportunity to be together. We're grateful for the technology that has brought us together as students from all across the country, literally, Father. We are grateful for the program. We're grateful for the education that we're receiving. We invite Thy Spirit to be with us today as we do our studies, that we will speak words of support and upliftedness to one another and help each other become better students. We say and ask these things, Father, in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Okay. So right now, I've just started reading in the New Testament, and I'm reading in Genesis, or Old Testament, excuse me, in Genesis 27. And right now, this is where Isaac was tricked into giving a father's blessing, not to Esau, I think is the name, but to the other son who had Rebecca had brought her other son to get the blessing. And I was really taken back by how, with the treachery that was involved for stealing the father's blessing, how it is that he could actually get that blessing. And the more I've given it some thought, is I think that what we learn from this example is that when we do things that are dishonest, not only does it damage others, the one who, Esau did not get the blessing, but then there were also natural consequences for him. So even though he did get the blessing, it couldn't be taken away. He had difficulty in other areas of his life. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like we can cheat or steal, but we never sin alone. I think that's probably what I took out of it the most, is that we never sin alone. And when we break commandments of God, not only are we hurting ourselves, we may get whatever need we just did immediately, but not only do we hurt ourselves, but we also hurt other people. That is a testimony to why it's just benefits for us to keep these commandments, because it benefits more than just us, and including the people that we love. And I pray in Jesus Christ.
Amen. Thanks for that thought.
Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to start with number 3 right here. Individually, what grade would you give the founders of Rent the Runway for their work in starting Rent the Runway? Actually, before we even go into number 3, what does everyone think about this job idea or this business idea?
I thought it was really cool. I don't know have you guys ever heard of Rent the Runway before this case study?
No.
Okay.
No, I've heard of something similar to it, but
yeah. So I've been familiar with it before, and I've contemplated renting items from there for weddings, and I've never done it, but I have navigated their site before, and it's really cool. Like I thought, and it's kind of fun, like having seen the business a little bit. And I worked in the wedding industry in Rexburg for 3 years, managing a venue, and we had a lot of bridesmaids and a lot of people, mothers of the bride, rent from this site. So I've had a lot of I've viewed it a lot of times, and everyone's had great experiences I've talked to. Everyone's loved it. And so I really like the business idea. I think it's genius, because how many times, like, I've been asked to, if you've been asked to attend a wedding that's held in a 5-star venue, that's the budget for the wedding is $60,000, you're going to feel really lame showing up in your church clothes, you know what I'm saying? And so there's a lot of times where you need to dress up, but you can't afford it. And what a great way to provide that experience to people at a better cost. So I think it's genius. I think it's a really, really great idea. So.
Well, Ammon, what do you think?
I really like the business idea, actually. I obviously would have about this much
interest.
Not necessarily interest. When my wife and I got married, we looked at different ways we could possibly rent a wedding dress.
Yeah.
For her because we were just like, we're going to purchase a wedding dress. You're going to wear it 3 times and then it's going to go away in a box. And that's it. Until maybe one of our daughters wears it if that's what she decides to do, or if we decide to sell it. So we looked at it and we said we couldn't find a spot to rent one eventually, so we ended up purchasing a dress anyway, but we looked for one. But this is something you get to do that men get to do all the time. When I was in high school and I went to prom and everything, we always went and rented our tuxes.
Yeah.
I was never going to go buy a tuxedo. That was crazy. In high school, I went and rented it, but all the girls had to go buy dresses.
Well, and that's the thing is rental dress companies. I mean, they exist in places like Utah and Rexburg. Like there's 4 wedding dress rental places in Rexburg and Idaho Falls, but I've never seen one outside of the Mormon area. And this is the first one I've heard of online. So it's like something that no one else has done.
Yeah, so I really like the idea. They bungled some of the rollout things, I thought. Mostly good. If I had to give them a grade, I'd probably give them a B or a B+. Their big screw up was building that website, and they went through like 6 different developers.
So it wasn't for a lack of, when we look at that, it wasn't for a lack of knowledge. They knew it needed to be done.
Yeah, they
just weren't communicating.
Too quick on the trigger on who they hired, or they based it off of a referral, even though they didn't know who the referral was exactly or what their expertise was. And that came back to bite them several times.
Well, I think it's a huge kind of a beginner's error, right? Like they think, okay, we can trust this guy, is referred to him, done. And they never check up on him. They didn't have any sort of like, okay, well, let's compare you to this other developer we're looking at. Like they just, quick to the trigger. I think that was a big mistake for sure. They should have there should have been a lot more communication going on about that issue.
Well, and I think one of the other issues that we run into is because they knew nothing about it. It's like, how would they know they were being taken advantage of?
Yeah.
Well, I think something they could have done is that, and they even said this, they hadn't checked up on it. Like they literally never gone to see the guy and never had gone to meet with them or talk to him. And all of a sudden they did, and they realized that there's only 2 developers and they got nowhere. So I think a little bit is to blame on their end, that they should have done some follow-up sooner. But I do agree, they maybe should have hired a marketing person earlier on that could guide them with some expertise. But I think I still think it's their fault. But.
Well, I have opened businesses before. I've started businesses, and I think I understand what was happening for them is that there was so much happening and moving along so fast that, when I hire someone to do something, I expect them to be professional and competent and not need hand-holding. That's the advantage of using an outside source.
Right.
When you hire someone, you always have to be on top of them because they have a tendency not to either be on a different page or whatever. So while I definitely would agree they are accountable and responsible, I feel like blaming them for it, based on what I saw, I think that they did everything that I've done. I've always had better outcomes than they did.
But don't you usually don't you usually interview and discuss things with your developer,
Absolutely.
before you pick
the problem
them?
that we run into is that they specifically said they didn't know what they were doing. So how would they have known the person they were hiring? And the truth of the matter is that with the exception of that one buddy or that one kid, they hired reputable people, a Canadian group and the India group. These were people who were high end in the India group. But I think that what's important to really recognize is that they didn't understand the complexity of what they needed from a website. They didn't find out until they hired a CTO.
Yeah. They didn't know for sure what they could follow up with their people could follow up, but if you don't know what you're following up on, it makes it kind of a useless process.
Yeah, it's almost like they needed to hire a consultant to help with that, or just brought on as SEO guy sooner, or something like that.
And that was their failure, because they are a tech company.
They need that
in marketing, and marketing is one of the production. Marketing is the most important position, because you can
especially
all
for e-commerce.
Sell them.
Yeah.
So that was their error, is not really hiring somebody to come in house and where the buck is at. So, what should they have done differently? Does the order in which they took specific actions matter? So, I think that they should have. One of the things that they said that they noted in the reading is that they started with an MVP, the most viable product. But I think that didn't really apply in this situation, because their product is really the dresses. But starting with a website that wasn't fully functional, I felt was dangerous. And it did nothing but, and it did actually alienate a lot of customers.
Yeah, I thought that they did a great job doing a lot of research with the designers and with the dresses, and if people would if this was something that customers would want. But I thought they could have done more research into what kind of a website they needed, into the actual system. Like, they didn't know anything about it, which is why hiring people didn't work the way they wanted it to. And I'm not sure why they didn't do the research to know exactly what they needed.
Yeah, I don't think
I agree.
Based on what they said, until the CTO came on, even the Indian group who did well with the website didn't understand.
Yeah.
And
so I wonder if they could have met with different CTOs and different people and said, hey, this is what we want. And then had them say, okay, well, this is what you're going to need.
Yeah, and say, this is who you should use. Like, those CTOs have networks and connections.
Like I'm not sure. I wonder if they could have done more research on that level.
Well, and I think that we're probably all on the same page, because their distribution method and their ordering method came through the website. That was the priority. I mean, obviously not as important as getting the dresses, but it's like you have the dresses is number one, and the website was 1.25.
Yeah.
For it. So, Caitlin, what grade would you give? Emma, you said you'd give a B plus?
Yeah, B plus.
Yeah, I put down a B plus for that, because, I mean, I think they're successful and everything's like, I think for the most part they're successful, and they have a lot of great ideas and they have the right thing going for them. I just think they've made a couple errors so yeah, like, doing good, but B plus I think is an accurate grade for me.
Okay, I probably would be at a C plus B minus, because they really blew it on the website.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So have the founders of RTR validated their business model? I'd say that they did. They have a success. They're fully functional, right?
They're making they're turning stuff around. I mean, they're hitting the break-even points on the dresses.
Yep.
So I think they're good.
What is the business model? So that was the Netflix.
Yeah.
Right.
It was like the Netflix of fashion, basically.
Yeah, the Netflix of fashion. Okay. What are the key elements? So the key elements of their model is to be able to select. They can rent it instead of buying it. There's insurance, so that if there's any damage, that gets covered. The quick turnaround time, and then they mail it back. What else would be there?
It's not per se part of the business model itself, but who they're targeting, their target market. It was because they didn't have the developers on board until they switched their target market to young girls and young women who could then access the market later and provide financial benefit to those designers. If they were renting it out to a 60-year-old woman, the the developers are saying, well, where's the financial benefit in this for us? Those women have already, a lot of them have already reached their cap of spending ability. If they can't afford our dress now, they won't be able to.
Yeah, I like that business model of finding them following them through their stages of life. It talked about connecting with them at prom, following them through graduation, wedding, baby showers, black tie. I really like that idea of connecting with people while you're young so you can follow them through their major life events or possibly gain a customer for the designer. I thought that was really smart.
Yeah. And they succeeded in that. They had the 12.5% in the first 2 months had come back and rented another dress. That's actually a pretty good rate of keeping a customer for the 2 months that they've done it. In 2 months for a rental,
almost 13%.
Almost 13% is pretty good.
That's exceptional, actually.
So I like that part of their business model.
I also appreciated the pivot that they made early on when they realized they couldn't get designers on board. That they decided to have their own warehousing.
Yeah.
I thought that was smart when they decided to do things in-house in terms of data collection and metrics. I thought that was a really smart move.
Yeah, this thing seems to have grown quite organically, especially with bringing in the stylists. The stylists actually become their personal shoppers for customers. One of the things that I noticed in here that they didn't mention when they were talking about the stylists, where are the stylists at? I don't remember where it is here. I'd have to go back and look. But, they're getting feedback because they're getting feedback from the customer. They're training the customer. But one of the things I think that they also could use the stylist for is suggestive selling or all of the additional accessories. If you want to get that dress, we have a fabulous necklace that would go great with it. Just something I think that wasn't mentioned here, but definitely makes them very useful.
Yeah.
What does it mean to validate a business model? Caitlin, I'm sorry. Did you want to say something?
No, we're good. Let's just keep moving.
Okay. What does it mean to validate a business model? I think if it works.
Yeah, if it's successful, that means it's validated, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it needs also to point out that if you have to make a pivot, that doesn't invalidate the business model. Business models if you stick to your business model, you're either the most lucky person on the world or you're an idiot.
Well, yeah, you'd have to be almost a genius to anticipate everything in order to not.
Because it won't ever happen. Business models are great on paper. And then once you get into an actual business setting, you have to be able to pivot. And so, and the reason I mentioned that is I had a previous class where someone was like, well, it wasn't a valid business model because they had to change. I was like, well, there's no such thing as a valid business model. I mean, Apple's making pivot. Apple's one of the most successful companies in the world, and they make a new pivot every year.
Yeah.
That's part of, especially in tech, that's part of being a business is being able to change your model according to what your consumers are demanding.
Yeah.
But definitely, I think it's it was validated because it worked. They're doing a good job.
Okay, so how many times, I think all the other questions over here all got answered. How many times does a dress need to be rented in order to break even?
So if I have done my math wrong with the variable of $31, I have between 2.1 and 2.8 times. So like 2, 3. That's the break even.
So when you say a variable of $31, what does that mean? Is that the rental price?
Yeah, it says there's a variable in their cost versus revenue of $31 in Exhibit 4.
Yeah, so their revenue per rental is $90 and their variable cost is $31, so they make $59 in profit per rental.
Oh, I thought that meant the variable in terms of an average. That was the variable between their. So maybe I misunderstood that.
What were you going to say? I was going to say that that's the way I guess, and I might have understood this wrong, is Possible. I don't know.
It doesn't describe it. It just says variable cost. I actually looked at that a couple times and tried to guess. So I didn't. How I took that is well, okay. So if the revenue varies between, it's like the average is $90, it could vary $31 more or less. That's how I took it. So when I calculated a high end and a low end. Being to break even on the high end they need to rent out 2.8 dresses. To break even on the low end would be 2.1. But I mean, that was just my interpretation. I have no clue. That wasn't super detailed.
Yeah. The variable cost would possibly be the shipping, the cost to repair the dress.
Yeah.
And the cost of taking it to the dry cleaner and your cost of your storage fees, your warehouse fees.
Per dress, because if some don't need, a zipper fix, but some do. So that's why I took it out of the revenue or added it to the revenue. But who knows?
Right.
I don't know.
So with the cost of dress of let's just say 226.
Yep.
And then I would take the 90 and minus out the 31, making it approximately $60. So $59 is what their revenue is.
Yep.
Yep.
So then we would need to have 226 by 60.
It comes to 3.83.
Yep.
Or you can't rent a dress 3.83 times 4. But then something I noticed is that when they ship it, you get 2 dresses for the cost of the one, because they ship you the 2 different sizes. And so
the part I didn't know how to calculate.
And so I actually said that it's even less than that. I actually ended up saying your break-even number of rentals is 8, because you're losing 2 of your dresses from your inventory every time one's rented. So you lose you're losing possible revenue there. So I actually said it was 8, but I'm not sure if that's right or not, because the other dress probably isn't going to have that high of a variable cost. I think the variable cost is probably the same, so it's probably still 4.
Well, and then we've also got $25 for the second dress. So I think probably the best way for us to identify that in the submission would be to have just identified that out. It's 4 dresses, but when you factor in the second one that they send in a different size, there are now 8 dresses involved. And then of course you've got the second dress for $25. So it gets a little, that's a complicated question. You're right.
So what do you think you add? Because I don't know if 8's necessarily right, because you're right. You don't have variable costs on the second
dress. It's not 1.
Dresses? Like, do you say it's 6 then? Do you just kind of...
I think you almost have to put it out there. You have to break it down so that we recognize. All right, but so then, in other words, are these promising results?
Yes. Either way, they're promising results.
I still think they're promising, yeah.
Yeah, I think they are too. I guess, I don't know. The question really to determine whether or not how many times it's rented is how many times can it be worn? I mean, let's just say you wear a dress for 5-hour max. You got your travel time, the party time. How many times can you really wear a dress before it starts to show wear?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't wear dresses.
Yeah, so if let's just say we have to do 4, you don't wear dresses. If we have to do 4 rentals to break even, but we only can send it out 6 times, is there a lot of profit? So based on the information they're giving us, it appears that it is promising, but without knowing what the lifespan of one of these dresses are,
it makes it hard to say.
It does. I mean, my church dress, I'll tell you honestly, I've got a church skirt. I've worn it for 15 years, and it still looks new.
Oh, dang.
I know, it's awesome. I worship this thing almost, and I'm going to repent for that later. But, I've got another dress, and I wore that every Sunday and every Friday at the temple for 15 years. But like on my professional clothing, some of them don't even last 6 months. So it has to. That would be a variable that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that depends. That's exactly true. I mean, I still have the suits I wore on my mission They don't look great. They're not a pristine condition anymore, but they're still workable. But you know, so it depends on how often you're wearing this. Is this once a week? Is it? I mean, it takes 8 days to turn around when you rent a dress. They have an 8-day turnaround before they receive the dress back. So in the 2 months they've been operating, you know, there's a possibility that these things were rented. If they were rented every time without having any layover, they're being rented about 7 times. So in 2 months, they're about to make their break even on each of them, or they have made their break even, depending on how those variable costs run. So they're, what's that?
I think that in any business model, a break even point of 2 months is
awesome. That's exceptional. It's hard to get much better than that.
Yeah.
And so it's certainly viable, the question. And so, but unless you know exactly what the lifespan is, I mean, if the lifespan is those 2 months, then that's not very viable.
Yeah, well, and I'd like to think too, like I think about dresses in my closet and I'm like, okay, which ones have I had the longest? Really, and goes for most articles of clothing, they're the expensive stuff. Like, not necessarily I'm talking $500, but like for example, if I'm looking at 2 pairs of shoes, like you could go through a pair of boots every winter if you're buying the cheap Target boots. But if you're willing to spend $80 on a pair of boots, they'll last you 4, 5, 6 years. So like I'm thinking about, I would hope that because they're designer expensive dresses, I hope that they last longer than 8 days of, wear over 2 months. So I would think they would. But I mean, I guess you never know. It depends on how rough people are, but if they're just going to black tie events and stuff, you'd think that they last. I would assume so.
I would assume they would last longer than that as well. But
I would certainly hope so. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense in the long run. You're right. Okay, so I guess it brings us down to the question: should Return the Runway seek to scale quickly now, or address operational efficiencies? Who thinks that they should scale quickly?
I do.
Why?
And when I say scale quickly, I'm not sure necessarily. I think they should purchase more dresses. This holiday season, they had 75% of their inventory out of the house. And I wonder how many people got turned away because they couldn't get the dress they wanted. So I think massive that they couldn't. Yeah, so I think they would help to get some new dresses, but then I like the idea of doing accessories, necklaces, earrings.
See, that's where we disagree. I don't think they should do accessories.
You don't?
Because jewelry breaks so much, but that's just my opinion. I like their idea of like selling consumables, like stockings. You could buy it, but I like
that idea too.
I could just see like so many problems with, like, my jewelry breaks more than anything else I own. So I don't know. I could just say things like, I don't know. It just seems like a lot of work until they can scale. Like they've only been up for like a year, like not even. So it's like, I don't know. I was like, well, maybe add accessories when maybe there's a slowdown in like a year or two and they need something fresh. I don't know. But I don't know. I got scared when I saw jewelry. I was like, oh, but I like the consumables idea for sure.
Okay, what about addressing operational efficiencies? Caitlin, is that what you think?
Yeah, I think they should. And in terms of scaling, I kind of agree with Eamon a little bit. Yes, I think they should add dresses. Do I think they should like scale up? No, but I think they should, think about, okay, by next holiday season, we should probably add another 1,000 dresses. However, I think they need to focus just with that. I don't know. They already said, like, unless I missed something, the CTO guy said, look, I checked. If something was 20% good with the website, we left it and we'll just come back and fix it later, basically. And all those problems that they left or they haven't fixed, those are going to be problems down the road. Like, I think they need to fix that and go back through and just make sure they're operationally sound before scaling up. But that's my opinion. I don't know.
Well, actually, and I'm disappointed that we have to choose an either or on this, because the truth is that I'm not sure it's an either or thing. I
Yeah,
think
like
the
you
most
can do both.
important, the operational efficiencies is a no-brainer. Those absolutely have to be addressed because those just perpetuate more problems, more customer service
Exactly.
issues. I think that both need to happen. I think that we do need to scale, but right here where it says if we scale quickly, that's the key word. So I would have to say that no, we don't need to scale quickly. We
Yeah.
do need to scale, but we need to address the operational efficiencies. But even more important to me than the operational efficiencies, it's about the dilution of the company. Because the more money they borrow, the more they give of their company away. And so both of those can be done. Scaling is an operational activity. It may not go as quickly, but because they're right after the holiday, we're not going to see the same hit for another 10 months. I mean, obviously, we've got the wedding season coming, so we're going to see a hit in the wedding season. But I think that both can be done without losing their shirts on stock.
I agree. I
I
like
agree
a
with that.
hybrid kind of solution. That's kind of what I think we kind of landed at that with the last case too with the Dropbox. We're like, yeah, kind of do half and half because you do want to be scaling and fixing things, like you shouldn't put either to the side. I don't like.
I wonder if adding dress inventory could fall under operational efficiencies, so you can drop your wait list, so you can fix some of those other things. I wonder if that's part of it.
Oh,
would be
absolutely
adding dresses. So
that's part of the, and I think
you know,
the word here is quickly. So essentially what they're saying here is, do we borrow money to buy a huge number, or do we just continue to grow our stock operational? Because they have to renew the dresses because they've also got the new designer stuff coming out. So they're constant. That's part of their operational procedure. So
right.
The question is, do they borrow money to make it quick?
Well, and where they'll be going, I think I would say no on second thought.
Okay.
I'm changing my vote. The other thing that could be nice moving forward is this last time they launched in their bit right next to the holiday season.
Yeah.
That's when they launched it.
Great time to do it.
Great time to do it. Great time to get but a hard time to get kinks out because there's no time.
Yeah, you're busy.
Was not a gift.
So if with their new designer series and stuff coming out, they'll have a few months to see, which items are our hot items, which items are people buying the most, wanting to rent the most. Can we add inventory in those areas before they ever get to the holiday season this time around? As they go through the wedding season and different seasons, maybe they'll get a little bit of a view on what they need to get first.
All right, well, let's summarize this. Okay, so let's real quick, let's just identify. I didn't take roll earlier. Let's go ahead and identify yourself. I'm Kristen Wiederhold. Ammon?
I'm Ammon Howard.
And I'm Caitlin Jameson.
Beautiful. Okay, we did 1 and 2. When we started this, on number 3, we voted individually, and Ammon gave a B+, I gave a B-, and Caitlin gave a B+. So we were a strong B. We thought it was a good idea, and this is something that men have been doing for years. Ammon said that he's rented tuxedos, so this perhaps is just not a new idea, but it's in a new way of looking at it. Starting, what specifically did you see as most effective? Most effective was, of course, the way that they organized themselves with their designers. It was effective marketing when they did the Vogue bailed, but I think it was the New York Times or something did something on them. So they were organized pretty well to get this going. They did the background that they needed to do by going to Harvard and to Yale. We saw that they stumbled when it came to the tech management, and they should have brought a CTO in much earlier, in fact, first, because the distribution was through tech. They should have started with that right after they got their designers on board. And the specific actions matter. I think that they did it right. Is that what we decided, you guys? They got the designers on board and they got the tech handled?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 4, have the founders validated their business model. We felt that they did. There were a pivot here and there, but they did the research. They learned as they went effectively. They were smart in getting their business of advisors, their advisory board that helped them. Looks like they stumbled again with or I guess we're down here, aren't we? Sorry. The key elements of the model, what did we decide those were? Dresses?
We talked to, huh?
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go for it. Go right ahead. You're on a roll.
Models were the dresses, the management and shipment of them. The tech stuff, of course, was key. They're based on the amount of sales they had and the amount of people that signed up in the first 2 months, thanks to a what do you call it? The scoops and the social media stuff that they had in the article. Their business model was validated, and we knew that because it was successful. They were able to produce business and satisfy customers. How many times? Okay, so when we looked at number 5, we determined that based on the cost of a dress for a middle tier dress, which was $226, the revenue of rental and the costs, we're looking at approximately $59 or 4 dresses to break even. Those numbers actually change when we talk about the second dress that's also sent at no additional cost, which means 8 dresses would almost need to be used to make that. And we were not able to calculate the $25 for the second dress that was also available in there. We determined that based on a break even of just 4 rentals, which could usually be done within 2 months, it was extremely impressive. However, because we don't know how long a dress would last, how many times it can be rented, that gray area determines whether or not how profitable it really does become. Okay, and for number 6, we took a vote and we determined that going with the operational efficiencies was key. Would be the way to go, and while scaling up and making additional purchases would also be considered under the operational efficiencies. Our key determining word there was quickly. We didn't feel that taking a loan and giving up stock so that we could quickly scale was the ideal way to go. We determined that addressing operational efficiencies was the way to go to get really a good foundation, but of course continue to scale up so that we can meet the needs and the new fashions coming up. How's that, guys?
Good.
Sounds like everything.
Beautiful. All right, well, that concludes this one. Ammon, if you would be so kind as to let us know where the summary starts.
Will do.
And send it out to us.
Will do. Anyone know where Laura was?
I do not know.
I'm sure we'll get an email from her later today, I think.
Okay. All right, I'll send that back out to you guys.
Thanks. Have a good one, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Yep. Bye.